So now on the show, I want to take a look at a new film that opened in cinemas here in Australia this week. The film is called Benediction, and it's the brand new film from director-screenwriter Terence Davies that takes a look at a poet that I have to admit that I didn't know much about, which is kind of strange because his kind of work is the kind of poetry that I like to read. His name was Siegfried Sassoon, and he's played here in the film. The younger version is played by Jack Lowden, and the older version is played by Peter Capaldi. Now, Sassoon kind of rose to prominence because he was a World War I soldier, a very decorated soldier, who ended up pulling out of the war because he felt that the war was being lengthened for gains for different governments. Now, aside from that, and which was a very big part of his life, because he was kind of labelled that the reason that he had those beliefs was because he'd been mentally scarred by his time during the war. Now, what followed from that was a brief time in what was known then as a hospital for people with nervous conditions, which was basically an asylum. He then, from there, seemed to go through destructive relationship after destructive relationship, especially with men, until he met Hester Gaddy, played by Kate Phillips. Now, this should have been a really, really interesting film. I'm going to say straight out, this is one of the most frustrating films that I've watched this year, because the story of Siegfried Sassoon is so fascinating that I wanted to know more and more about him. But Terence Davies shoots this film in a really, really annoying way. Now, I understand early on in this film, it is great to use footage of the war and have Sassoon's poetry being spoken over the top of it. That works remarkably well, and I wouldn't have had a problem if that had happened all the way throughout the film. What I had a problem with, though, was the film would go from a regular storytelling kind of way into these kind of artistic sequences that I'm sure in Davis's head felt like a good thing, but on screen, all it really did was take me out of the story. I would find myself watching a really, really dramatic scene with Sassoon having a fight or having a deep discussion with somebody, and then all of a sudden I would be completely yanked out of that natural world by an artistic sequence that might be Davies' style, but I don't think did any justice to the story that was being told here at all. Now, having said that, you do learn a lot about Siegfried Sassoon as you watch this film. You learn a lot about why he became the man that he became. Perhaps I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of an investigation into whether he really did have mental scars after the war and that's why he felt the way that he did, or whether or not that he didn't have mental scars and that was his genuine feelings. There wasn't a lot of war footage in this film, as in they didn't show the events that happened to him during his time on the battlefront that led to where he became. I don't know why Davis chose that way of doing things, because to me I think those scenes would actually have really, really enhanced more of getting to know Siegfried as a character. This is a fascinating film, but I really think that Davis has kind of spoiled it in the way that he has shot the film. I would love to see somebody else tackle the story of Siegfried Sassoon's life and perhaps tell the story a little bit better. Someone said on IMDb, and I tend to agree with them, that the way that Davis has shot this makes it almost feel like a tele movie rather than something that you need to see on the big screen. I really think the story is fascinating. I think Jack Lowden does a brilliant job, and so does Peter Capaldi at times as well. But they're let down, I think, by a director that wanted to be a little bit too artistic. I'm going to give this one 2.5 out of 5 because I think it fails a little bit, although it does tell a fascinating story.